Today I am reviewing the new 2021 9th generation iPad. This year they bumped up the processor to an A13 Bionic. They updated the screen by adding True Tone. The storage configurations now start at 64 gigabytes. And they have improved the front-facing camera so it can take advantage of Apple's new Center Stage feature. Overall, I think this iPad is a really good value at $329, but what do you think? Let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days. Yeah, I think that was a good take. I like the location of the microphone up here. I think it worked pretty well. Wait, hold on. What? Guys, we're not done yet. We need the lights back on. Okay, so the 9th generation iPad is not the most exciting piece of tech out there. Today we have a new iPad mini that's redesigned. We have fancy new iPhones. This still has the button. It has those bezels on the top and the bottom. But this is Apple's best-selling iPad. And I've said this in other videos before, I'll say it here again. This is one of the best values in tech. Usually I tell people, don't get the cheapest thing out there. Windows computer, don't get the cheapest one. Drawing tablet, don't get the cheapest one. Gas station sushi, don't get the cheapest one. For most things, paying a little bit more to get a much better value is worthwhile. But I think with this iPad, it's already there. So there are a lot of questions that come with getting a lower priced device like this. So let's go through our whole review thing. To do that, we need a good art project to start with. A few days ago, I asked you guys over on YouTube, hey, I need an OC, original character, to draw, send me yours. Krishna said, can you draw my character Bob? I've been familiar with Krishna's work for years and we've been friends on Twitter. So yeah, absolutely, I want to draw his character. And I'll admit, I had a lot of fun with this, so send me your OCs and you might make it into a future video. Yeah, like all my iPad videos, I am going to be using Procreate to draw this out. I just think it works really well. I like the pencil tools, I like the brushes that I have here. It's my favorite iPad drawing program. I like it so much, I've created several courses for it. There are discount codes down below. Also, as a footnote, Procreate is rolling out a new update sometime in the next few weeks or few months, and when they do, I'm going to be updating that course, and that update's going to be free for anybody who's already purchased it. All right, while I draw, let's talk about this iPad. In the box, you get the iPad itself, some quick instructions, and some Apple stickers. Also in here is a USB to Thunderbolt cable, and included with the iPad is still a power adapter. I will admit, the iPad design is looking really dated at this point. You still have that front button, still rocking that 10.2 inch screen, which has a resolution of 2160 pixels by 1620. Now this is the cellular version of this iPad. That means it's got a plastic top along the back. The regular has solid aluminum all along the back. I mentioned the A3 processor earlier. That's a really good processor to have in here. Yes, it is 2 years old, but from my experience, these iPads tend to last a long time. What experience is that? So my daughter still uses the 6th generation iPad. Do you use it every day?
Yep.
Have you noticed it slowing down at all?
Maybe a little bit.
Okay, so that's in 3 years. I think it's amazing that a really inexpensive iPad that is over 3 years old is still getting updates and still runs pretty well. Obviously, if you go with an iPad Air or an iPad Mini or an iPad Pro, it's gonna last even longer, but this thing isn't gonna be laggy and slow in just 6 months or a year. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles that you expect from the iPad Pro, right? This is only a 60 hertz screen. The biggest thing I can say about this screen is that it's not laminated. That means that there is a significant gap between the glass and the screen below it. This isn't a killer. This doesn't mean you can't draw on it or it's distracting or anything, but it clearly looks like an older screen. Honestly, anymore, it's hard to find screens that aren't laminated. Now, I talked about the processor, but I think the biggest upgrade to this iPad is how much storage it comes with by default. The one thing that gave me pause about the last generation iPad was that it only came with 32 gigabytes of storage. Now, it comes with 64. Now, people obviously get by with 32 gigabytes, but that's something my daughter bumps into all the time is just storage, having to get rid of old apps to get new apps, having to constantly back up her work. 64 gigabytes just gives you so much more breathing room and makes this update really nice. Now, when we get into drawing and drawing performance, the Apple Pencil is the Apple Pencil, which means it's really good. It's one of the most organic styluses you're gonna find out there, and my favorite thing in the world to draw with. Palm rejection on the Apple Pencil is world class. So is pressure sensitivity, and even the way the Apple Pencil can be tilted on its side Feels very natural and very organic. Now you may be wondering, what's the difference between the Apple Pencil 1 and the Apple Pencil 2? When it comes to drawing experience, absolutely nothing. It's pretty much identical. The main difference is in how they charge. The Apple Pencil 1 comes with a little adapter that can be plugged into a lightning cable, or you can plug it directly in the back of your iPad to charge it up that way. And yes, that's a little awkward. The Apple Pencil 2, however, is charged magnetically along the side of the device, and I find that to be the biggest upgrade if you go with something like the Air or the Mini. With this, I tend to only charge the Pencil when it's dead and I absolutely need to, whereas with the Pencil 2, it's always charging on its own when it's storing along the side of the iPad. Now the good news here is just by plugging in that Pencil for, about a minute, you're gonna get a good amount of charge into it. So it does charge quickly and the battery does last for a reasonable amount of time. One thing a lot of people always ask in the comments about these iPads is, what's the latency like? Is there a lot of lag on the pen? And for the most part, no. I mean, there is some. It is noticeable if you're looking for it, but I find it's really good. This comes down more to the apps you're using. Many of the apps for the iPad are really well optimized to work with the Apple Pencil. For example, if I'm using this next to an iPad Pro, you can see me drawing on both of them at the same time. You can definitely tell that the iPad Pro is faster. However, I don't think the lag on the standard iPad is horrible or even that bad. And honestly, if I have to slow down the footage for you to even tell, it's not that big of a deal. The other drawback on this device compared to some of the other devices out there is there's only 3 gigabytes of RAM. Why does that matter? Some apps like Procreate will limit how many layers you're allowed to put in your file based on how much RAM you have. There are 3 gigabytes here. So for example, if I have a canvas that's, say, the size of the iPad Pro screen, that's kind of my default go-to, 2,732 pixels by 2048. On this iPad, at that file size, you're gonna get around 31 layers. On an iPad Pro, you're gonna get well over 100. Now, if your canvas gets larger, what Procreate does to compensate is it gives you less layers to work with. What Procreate's trying to do is not run out of RAM, because when it does, it'll crash. What I usually tell people is if you work with huge files, that's when you want to go with the iPad Pro. For most sketching and standard drawing work, this thing, honestly, it's fine. All right, so with the specs and some of those questions out of the way, I want to get to my opinion. Do I think it's good enough? And I've probably already given this away, but yeah, I really think it is. Dollar for dollar, this is one of the best deals in tech. The other thing you need to consider when you're looking at the price is, yes, this iPad is only $329. However, you're going to need an Apple Pencil as well, and that first generation Apple Pencil is still $100. So the base price you're looking at before tax is at least $429. There are Android tablets that are out there that are cheaper. However, I don't think they're going to last you as long. They're not going to be supported as long, and the app ecosystem isn't as strong. So by spending a little bit more on an iPad compared to an Android tablet, I personally feel is a very good value. If you're already tied into the Android ecosystem, I think something like the Tab S6 Lite is still a really good product out there. I just think, for me personally, the iPad edges that out. Now, over the last year or two, pen displays have dropped in price. I mentioned the Galaxy Tab S6 Lite. That's dropped down to like around $300. Sometimes you can find it for like $250. So you can find things that are cheaper than this iPad. But if this is so good, why would someone jump up the iPad Air or the iPad Pro? And for me, it comes down to some of those smaller features. For example, on the iPad Air, the way the Apple Pencil 2 charges is just better. There's another gigabyte of RAM, so you're going to get more layers in apps like Procreate. The screen looks better. It just feels like a more modern device. But a lot of those things are aesthetic. They're feel. You don't need a lot of those features. They're just nice to have. When we're talking about the iPad Pro, we're talking about screen size. If you want something really big, you do need to go with the iPad Pro. Also, the iPad Pro is rocking the M1 now, which means it gets more RAM. So the iPad Pro is significantly beefier. Plus the better refresh rate and the HDR screen, you get the idea. All the features are stuffed into that iPad. So at the end of the day, I can understand why this is Apple's best-selling iPad. It's a tremendous value for the price that it's at. What do you think? Let me know down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you in a couple of days.